Hey guys, Hopeless Hallow here, and welcome back to the next video. Today we'll be going over spells and spell casting. For this example, we'll be using my ever so faithful friend, the Bard. But we'll also go over the various different types of spells, such as aberration, conjuration, divination, and so on. So, for most spellcasting classes, you can find the spellcasting rules under the word spellcasting, usually as their first or second feature. There are three different types of casters: full caster, half caster, and warlock. Full casters gain various spell slots stronger and stronger as they get stronger. Half casters are a mix of both caster and some other stereotype. And warlocks have their own unique way of casting. For more detailed rules, you can check out the spell rules. This is a link, and spell listing for the class's individual spells. So how spells work is that there are many different types, but they're categorized into spells and cantrips. Cantrips are the 0 level spells. You usually get a few of them, and you learn one or two more as you get stronger. But they are spells that don't require spell slots and can be cast as many times as they want to be. What are spell slots? Spell slots are the things that you use to cast spells, most of them anyways. They're what limit you from constantly shooting out your strongest spells. Most spellcasters have the same amount of spells, and you can see this on this part, the spell slots per level part of the table. This is how many spells you can know at each given level, how many cantrips you know. And this little half section is the spell slots. You get 2 at first level, 3 at second level, but then you get multiple different types, 4 first level and 2 second level, and so on. This goes all the way to 9th level, where you first get it at 17th level. Spells have a certain spell level, as you can see by the different levels of spell slots. A first level spell can be used if you get rid of one of your first level or higher spell slots. That's right, you can use the same level or higher. Some spells actually get stronger if you use a higher level spell slot, rewarding you for using up something more valuable for that spell. You get all your spell slots back at a long rest, unless you're a warlock, and then you gain them back at a short rest. So, as you already know, you can use a higher level spell slot for lower level spells. But the other way does not work. You cannot use a 9th level spell by expending a 3rd level spell slot, and so on. Each class has their own list of spells. Spells can be known by different classes, and vice versa. The warlock is different, though. The warlock only gets a few spells, as seen on his table here. The amount of spell slots is just in a straight line. There's no linearness to it. And they only get a max of 4. That's even at 20th level. But as you can see here, all of their spell slots are of the same level. So first level has first, second level has first, third level has second, 4th level has second, and so on and so on. They also stop or cap out at 5th level spell slots. So warlock's a type of half caster. Of course, you can have features, those class features, that allow you to have extra spell slots or unique abilities that count as spells. One example of this is also on Warlock. They're called the Mystem Arcanum. Warlocks get them for 6th level, 7th level, 8th level, and 9th level. They're basically a single spell slot for that level of spell. So those are spell casting. But that's how you activate a spell. How do you use one? Well, first we gotta explain what spells are. There are many different types, as you can see here. So if we hit View All, this will take us to their in-browser search engine, which allows you to search for any spells. You can search for their name, what class they come from, the level of the spell, tags such as spells that banish, that buff, that charm, used for combat or communication, and so on. And the amount of time it takes to cast. Actions, bonus actions, minutes, hours, and then you hit filter spells, and your list of spells will come up. There's also the advanced filters. What type of magic it is. You can see that here. Aberration is more protection and awareness magic. Conjuration is summoning and creation magic. Divination is information and distance magic. Enchantment is charming and mind affecting magic. Evocation is damage, healing, raw energy. Illusion is trickery of the mind, the body, and of light. Necromancy is the necrotic evil, usually. The necrotic energy that saps away the life of most creatures and can give false life to other things. And transmutation, the forming of objects and the changing of objects. Now, the next two are save required and attack type. If you're targeting someone else for your spell or other object, they'll either have a save required or attack type. Attack types can be either melee or ranged, but usually require an attack roll. How you calculate this is you take your spellcasting modifier, let's take Charisma, for example, add it to your proficiency, and boom. You now have to beat the object's or opponent's AC, or armor class, as if you were hitting them with a sword or something similar. Save required doesn't make you roll, it forces the opponent to roll. They add their modifier for whatever save it is. It can be a strength, a wisdom, a charisma, an intelligence save, based on whatever the spell is. And they add their modifier to a roll of the d20. They have to beat your number, otherwise be affected by the spell. Some spells, mainly damaging ones, can still slightly damage or affect them, despite them making their save. How do you know what number is the save required, or also known as DC, difficulty class? Well, you take your spellcasting modifier, let's take charisma, maybe +3. Take your proficiency, probably, depending, this varies from level to level, but let's take +3. And add it to 8. So 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 8 is 14. They now have to beat they have to tie or beat a 14. That's important. If their number's the same as your number, then they also still win. Also damage type. Damaging spells have different types of damage. There's acid, bludgeoning, cold, fire, force, lightning, necrotic, and so on. Necrotic's like evil. Lightning's lightning energy. Force is more forceful energy. Fire is burning, cold is cold, or freezing, bludgeoning's hitting hard, acid is dissolving, piercing is penetrating, poison is slow killing, psychic is mind-based, radiant is just pure radiant power, slashing slashes, thunder like a loud noise. Short bow and long bow are interesting ones that are basically because of magic items. One-handed melee attacks, unarmed attacks, basic and other are basically what type of attack is being made. Conditions. You can be inflicted by conditions by some types of spells, like being blinded makes it impossible to see. Charmed makes it hard to disobey the person who charmed you. Deafened means you can't hear. Exhausted has various effects depending on how exhausted you are. Frightened means you're scared of the or even terrified of the opponent, and so on. Paralyzed, invisible. Most of these are self-explanatory. Petrified is being turned to stone. Prone is when you're on the ground. Unconscious and stunned. There are various different things. Components. Every spell will have one or a variety of these components. V stands for verbal. This means you have to speak a magical incantation for the spell to work. You can select yes, no, or doesn't matter for all of these. Somatic is basically the movement of your hands. Do you have the proper limbs or hands or fingers needed to move to properly cast and weave the spell? And finally, material. A lot of spells require you to have certain objects to cast them, mainly as a catalyst, if you know what that means. Most spellcasters take care of this with a thing they call arcane focus. This varies from class to class. Bard can be a musical instrument or really any form of art. Cleric can be a religious symbol. A sorcerer can be some kind of crystal. Warlock can be a cursed weapon. Every class has their own thing. But say you don't have an arcane focus, or it's just out of reach, someone knocked it out of your hand. Well, you can also have a component pouch. This has a lot of various components that could be required of by your spells. Some spells will have items where next to it is a cost, usually described in GP, also known as gold pieces. These ones cannot be taken care of by component pouch or arcane focus, and must be had on hand. And the number there is the usual price of the item required to cast the spell. And finally, the consuming part. Some spells will consume material components. For that, your arcane focus and component pouch cannot comply with that either. And you must have that material on hand, and the material will disappear after being used. Next up is concentration. Concentration basically means the spell is powerful enough or just difficult and unique to cast that it requires your full concentration. You can only have one spell with concentration at the time, and if you get hit, you're forced to make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, or a DC Constitution saving throw of half the damage rounded down that you took. Whichever of the two is higher is the one that you make. If you succeed, you stay concentrating on the spell. If you fail, you lose concentration of the spell and it immediately ends, unless stated otherwise. Ritual. Some spells have the ritual tag on top of them. This means that you can cast the spell like normal, but if you don't want to use an expel slot, you can take the normal time that it would cast the spell, use the spell, and add an extra 10 minutes on top of that. In return, you do not use a spell slot. Warlocks can actually not use rituals normally. They have to use the spell slot unless they take the Book of Shadows for their Pact feature. Subclass is a coming soon feature. Basically, some subclasses get certain spells for free. Source category and sources. Source category is a unique and sometimes gimmicky thing, so I personally like to use the sources. Because a lot of these spells are not for free, you can filter out what spells come from which areas. The free ones are in basic rules. The various different spellcasting classes is a half-caster Artificer, full-caster Bard, full-caster Cleric, full-caster Druid, half-caster Paladin, half-caster Ranger, full-caster Sorcerer, then Warlock's in his own category, and full-caster Wizard. Artificer's not free, that is why there's no video on my channel about him. Bards use Charisma, Artificers use Intelligence, Clerics use Wisdom, Druids use Wisdom, Paladins use Charisma, Rangers use Wisdom, Sorcerers use Charisma, Warlocks use Charisma, and Wizards use Intelligence. All of the more mind-based stats. And that's all the different things you need to know about spells. Some have range, some can only target themselves, but everything you need to know that isn't specifically listed on the spell has been covered. Well, that's all for now. Bye.